repeated, yours is the strength, the glory, the blessing, the majesty, which comes out of 1 Chronicles 29:11. Okay, so that's the relationship with the Pascha and the Passover meal. Okay, then we have two acts of love, which we wanted to have a look at. One is the washing of the feet, which is we all know. So after they ate the Pascha meal, Jesus washed the disciples' feet, and he did this for two reasons. Before this, they were all contending among each other who was the greatest, and Jesus also did this act as a purification for them, and also to show them humility. So it's really the washing of feet is really the act of a servant. It's not something that someone sort of does who's of of great rank like the Lord. But he wanted to show them that with this act of love, that if you want to be great, then you have to be a servant to everybody else. And all the Gospels talk about this humility. And he also tells us in John 13 to do as he has done. And also whoever has been baptized only needs to have their feet washed. So this is the one act of love. The other act of love that that Jesus did that night was, what do you think it is? No? It's in the Garden of Gethsemane. Why was Jesus praying with such anguish? Go through. Okay. Okay. Well, we can also in this instance compare the first garden, the Garden of Eden, where Adam fell into temptation. In the second garden, the Garden of Gethsemane, which means pressed oil, Jesus overcame temptation. In the Garden of Eden, we see that Adam is talking to the ruler of darkness, with Satan. In the second garden, we see that Jesus is praying to the Lord. And he was in very much in anguish. So why was he in anguish? He says, Father, if it is your will, take the cup away from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but yours be done. In this, he speaks like a full human being. So what's this cup that he is asking, God to, if it is his will to take it away? What sort of things is he going through? Is it the physical suffering?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So part of his humanity, or his humanity, of course, he feels the suffering that we do. He feels the pain, he feels the hunger, he feels, all the whipping that he went through, all these sort of things he was feeling. But would that make him have so much anguish to have sweat of blood? What else could be happening? Is it, what other suffering can he have? His emotional suffering, is that enough to make him sweat blood? If he has the things that he suffers through, like unjust reproaches, mockery, unjust hatred, betrayal by a trusted friend,
Eternal bleeding.
Sorry?
Eternal bleeding.
Eternal bleeding? It is eternal bleeding from his anguish, from his suffering. But even, and it was very difficult for Jesus to have to look at, like being betrayed by someone who he loved. Not only that, but also seeing like the Jewish people whom he loved and who he had put aside for all these years as his chosen people, to know that they're going to lose their salvation. But is that even enough to give him that anguish? Not even that. It is all part of it, but the other part is the cup that he had to drink was the cup of our sins. And that was a very bitter thing to have. He had to drink our murder, injustice, jealousy, lying, stealing, adultery, all these horrid things that we see. And I think that we really get to understand how horrible the sins are when we see that Jesus suffered so much with anguish that he had to swallow this cup. He is without blemish, without fault, but he had to take this cup himself for our sake. And again, he did this willingly. He would have wept for Jesus. He would have wept for all the people that he could not save as well. I think that's short and sweet. All right, Glenn, if you got that. Any questions, maybe? Did you want to add anything?
No, that's very, very nice. That's a very, very beautiful thing to try to imagine tonight, guys. Tonight's probably one of the most serious nights into tomorrow morning. And what Tonshi Ann was saying is, when you try to think about it just in its reality, that he was drinking all the sins that I've done in private, all the sins that I've done in public, all the thoughts that are sinful thoughts that I've had in my life, and not just mine, but billions and billions and billions of human beings from the beginning of time to the end of time. So the sins that God carried weren't sort of the sins from the beginning of time till his time. It was from the beginning of time till the end of time. He was carrying those sins. I could just imagine my sins are enough, but he's carrying billions of sins times billions for each person, and he was drinking that cup. Like that's how sour it was. That's how bitter it was. And that's, as Tonshi Ann said beautifully, that was what was causing all this pain inside him. The physical pain could be handled, but the spiritual pain was much, much, much bigger. And I think it's a note that we need to have tonight to really think about that when we sin, that's what our sin caused. And we need to realize, there was a beautiful story that I'll never forget, a priest said in a sermon. He was saying he was sitting with his confession son, and he was, I think, in primary school, and the confession son was crying and crying and crying. He goes, "Why are you crying?" He goes, I sinned this particular sin, or I think I lied, something like that. He said some sort of sin. I said, why are you so upset about that? He goes, because I know that when I sin, I put a thorn in his head, in the Lord's head. And that's true, that all the crucifixion scene is a scene of our sins and what sin did to the Lord. And so that's how we should be thinking whenever we're about to see something wrong on the internet, whenever we're going to think judgmental thoughts about someone, whenever we're going to gossip about someone. That should be the image that we're thinking, and that should be repulsive. Sometimes Satan, what he's done to us is he's made sin very normal. What can I do? I'm human. I have to sin. But really, it's not what you were called for. You were called for a life of righteousness and holiness, and the sin caused a lot of bitterness that the Lord had to swallow on a night like tonight. And tonight, if you want to relive the events as well, Christ is going to be up the whole night, and he was being trialed up until about 2 a.m. in the morning, like the stuff that you're hearing now. That's been the trials are going to go up to about 2 a.m. and then he's going to spend the night in prison. So it's not like we go home, but actually to relive the events, it's a very, very tough event. That's why the older generation that were a bit stronger in fasting, they fast from tonight till the Feast of Resurrection. I can't do that, but I'm just telling you that's how the church used to connect with Christ in his suffering. Not that we want to suffer, but we want to appreciate what he did for us. And so that's why it's a very important night, a somber night, but when we take it for the amazing love that he poured into tonight, we're going to really appreciate tomorrow and onwards. So thank you very much. Let's go now to our lesson, Pascha. Thank you.